Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast. There is plenty to catch up on this podcast, including a big weekend in F2 and F3, the WEC 1,000 miles, the IMSA 12-hour Sebring, Indycar, NASCAR. But first, we're going to Bahrain and talking about a little race in Formula One. The first race of the season. What a spectacle.
Great to be back. Just to talk about the spectacle, can we just run back to the end of the last show we had? You asked me what I thought the result would be. I can't remember. What did I say now at the end of the last show? Did I say a Ferrari?
Yeah, you did well. Ferrari won too. Very good. Very good.
Did I say someone at Haas would beat Mr. Schumacher? I might have predicted and slightly embarrassed Mr. Schumacher. Did I also say that I felt that despite a lot of people thinking Sainz, the Ferrari, I thought Leclerc would come back to be the better Ferrari? Did I say that as well last week?
Time to move on. I think it was a very good weekend. And it was, you were right, actually. Good prediction. But you would never have predicted Ferrari 1-2 in those circumstances. I don't think anybody
I did predict.
Not in those circumstances. He wasn't
a Red
really...
Bull meltdown. I think a large part of the viewers. Not that I'm going to stir up any controversy on our first show of the new season, but there must be a lot of people quietly having a giggle over the demise of poor old Red Bull. But I mean, it's always a shame when a team loses results at the last one, especially the racing was so good, and Max could have challenged for the lead after that pace car restart, and it could have been even more exciting than it was. But all starting qualifying, some ups. I mean, and the qualifying story has to surely be Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. I mean, that was just outrageous.
Just incredible. I didn't really rate him that much as a driver. Shows what I know, doesn't it?
And of course, Valtteri Bottas, Kevin was 7th, wasn't he? And Bottas in the Alfa Romeo was quite a shock 6th. Otherwise, I think, qualifying was pretty much as expected. Apart from George, the great Saturday man in a Williams, cocked up big time on his last qualifying lap. And he's down in 9th, wasn't he, on the grid? He recovered in the race, but it was... But
that surprised me with George, because George Russell, who is clearly a very talented driver, said, I rolled the dice and had one shot. But hang on a minute, the amount of times the greatest, the Lewises and the Maxes of this world, on that last lap, always nail it.
Yeah.
So it's not about rolling dice, it's about doing your job, son. That's what it's all about. As if I know what I'm doing.
He redeemed himself in the race. He was on Lewis's pace in the race. But the other thing about qualifying was McLaren just meltdown. I mean, the best looking car, I reckon, that wonderful orange and blue. But McLaren and Aston Martin, of course. Aston Martin lost Vettel, which probably didn't help, and Hulkenberg came in to the delight of many Twitter followers. And out-qualified, I think, didn't he, in the end, out-qualified Stroll. But so Aston on the back foot, but McLaren, really, the big losers.
It's funny you say the McLaren's the best looking car, and I agree, it's a beautiful looking car, but those 20 cars under the lights look spectacular. They look beautiful. So, very impressive look. And I think we should take a step back before qualifying, actually, because the day before it all kicked off, of course, we had the announcement from Formula One, from the FIA, about actually the rule changes and what they're going to do now. So they waited all that time, of course, because they knew it was too late for anybody to contest anything. And has it made any difference? Is it going to make any difference? They certainly seem a lot tighter and stricter on track limits. That's one.
They haven't released the rules, though, which is a bit strange. They've sent all the overtake. I'm not sure I'm happy with the overtaking rules that leave it to you to give a place back, and you have to decide if you should. And then they put this thing now, you must be level on the outside you must give the car the outside room if they're level with you. But it's a quite soft, it's mainly alongside. I forget what the actual wording is. I tweeted, you have to be front wheel to front wheel. And unless you're front wheel to front wheel on the outside, you give the corner away. They're not strict with the exact position. But anyway, it remains to be seen.
Did you see So the championship they agreed was, they didn't agree with the championship. They said human error led to...
Oh, going back and back. Yeah.
Okay,
no.
But
I'm not going back that far. We're not going back. We're not going back that far.
I thought it was quite funny that it's still trending now, I think, human error championship or champion or something on Twitter. But qualifying was a bit of a shock for McLaren, absolutely. I think they were the losers all over the weekend, to be honest with you. Ricciardo, he was off the pace. Yeah. And poor Orlando just didn't turn up either, who's not even to be seen. But the race was... What did you think of the actual race, Tiff? Was it exciting? Were you on the edge of your seat?
Well, it was because of the pace car. It was because there was quite a bit of close encounters. I'm not as excited as all the normal pundits said, it's great, they're following closer, it's great, it's different. But to be honest, the first 5 laps, the top 5, did that usual sort of spread out by a second to second to second. And, for a while I thought, is it really that different? And but then we saw Albon holding up a pack of cars behind him, which was very exciting. There was but there always was great, crazy racing in the back half of the field, even in the old regulations. So I don't know. I'm still sitting on the fence to see really whether these great regulations changes have changed much. But I'm coming out. I have got, this is controversial, Paul. You have to listen to me on this one, right? I'm beginning to think we have to have DRS. I know. I thought I would never. I'm going to put into everyone's minds, our viewers and listeners, right, that the great thing about Formula Ford racing or Caterham racing, we think is exciting because people overtake a lot. And they overtake a lot because they've got slipstream, which creates the overtaking. Now, with all the great aero bloody cars with their dirty air, first of all, you can't follow close enough. They've tried to change that, with a ground effect. But by doing that to get the cars closer, they've reduced the slipstream a car creates. Therefore, you haven't got the extra bit of overtaking maneuver of the slipstream. So, in my mind, this is what I'm trying to... Are you listening? I'm trying to hypnotise you all. I'm going to call opening your DRS, not as an artificial overtaking assist, but as creating slipstream. You see?
So what
you're saying where I'm going now? What I'm saying is don't think of it as what I'm saying is don't think of this anymore as a horrible artificial overtaking device. All you're doing is giving the following car a slipstream, which is exactly what makes Formula Ford and Caterham racing so good. So put it in your mind. Okay. When the flap goes open.
It's fine to admit you're wrong once in a while. I know, even the greatest get it wrong once in a while.
Well, otherwise, I think we're going to have to accept we've got flipping DRS forever. So you've either got to put that into your mind that DRS isn't really artificial; it's creating slipstream, which is my new mental approach. I mean, at the end of the race, Lewis with the DRS open, close to Perez down the straight, couldn't even pull alongside. Either that's because the Mercedes got porpoising problems, it's got drag, or the engines aren't tuned up, or Honda have got even more power than ever. So its overtaking still looks pretty hard.
Yeah, but you say that, but the Mercedes wasn't a competitive car this weekend. So
but still a straight. Yeah, but at the end, when Lewis was in Perez's gearbox almost, he couldn't get past him. But I mean, I think the highlight, I'm saying, the racing was as good. I mean, the 2 laps we had with Max versus Leclerc were outstandingly exciting. When they came out of the pits and Max attacked like he always does, it was brilliant. I mean, that was so, but he only went on for 2 laps. It was 2 brilliant laps, 2 of the best laps of racing we've had for a long time.
But there wasn't that much racing, was there? There was.
Well, no, those 2 laps, that's what I mean, But then, of course, the radio comes on. Right, you've had your 2 goes, your brakes are over. No. I mean, engineers, they give you the lightest brakes to save weight. They give you as little fuel as possible. And so we always get these situations when racing becomes racing, the engine, sorry, I'm going to fuel in the car. You've got to save a bit of fuel now. Oh, sorry, our brakes aren't big enough for this race because the computer says we have the lighter brakes. Over the average of the whole race, you'll go quicker. I think that's such a shame for the audience listening that he's attacked twice. No, he can't do it anymore, Max. Your brakes are overheating. I thought that was a bit of a
okay. On the Max subject,
balloon.
On the Max subject, then balloons bursting. I think it's a bit greater than that because we talked about how magnanimous Mr. Hamilton was. Sir Lewis was last year in defeat. And I don't think that I think even the most diehard of Max fans will agree he's probably not the most magnanimous in defeat. He little tantrums and spitting his dummy out, and it just doesn't.
I like that. I don't mind that with Max. I don't mind Max having to go on the radio. He thinks I'm not doing that. I think that's great. I don't mind a driver having to go in his own team or being a bit feisty. Kimi was laid back and amused us with his joking comments, and Max amuses me with his I'm fed up with this, So long as he's not complaining about what other people are doing, no, that's good. But you've stuck me on you've given me the wrong, schedule here.
Well, I don't. Yeah, it's good to question your team, but surely there's a time and a place. But it's so frustrating. You're in the heat of the moment, and I've been there. I don't really swear that much, but I've had a couple of.
Don't swear that much. I've seen your outtakes.
Exactly. The caveat was going to be that unless somebody hits me, and then you just red mist. You can't help yourself. It's quite funny. But was it karma for Red Bull on what happened last year, or
No, it's just motor racing.
It
happens. I mean, I'm sure they'll be back this weekend with brakes that last a bit longer and engines that last a bit longer, or fuel supply, whatever went wrong.
And has that changed your opinion on who's going to be world champion this year?
No, Ferrari, LeClerc. Ferrari, I've already told you that.
Hang on, you told me Max last week.
Oh, did I? Oh, I'm sure I meant. Well, I thought it was going to Ferrari one too, but I did think Max would do it. Yeah. I still think the Red Bull's maybe the quickest car, but yeah, it has to wait to be seen. But it was an interesting result. Yeah, the Ferrari 1-2 was great. You know, I think Lewis coming back to be on the podium was quite nice after what he's been through over the winter. Russell, George stayed with him once he got back into the place. And McLaren and Mercedes, 3-4. Then we had K-Mag in 5th. I mean,
just incredible.
Fantastic. Valtteri 6th.
Hang on. Whoa. We got to mention as well, Gunther as well, because if you saw any of the pictures of him afterwards, wow, what a brilliant bloke to have in the sport. Just that's a person.
What they've lived through, you know. They got Mr. Haas over in America, you know, paying their bills and phoning up every Sunday night. Where did you finish? Yeah, last and second to last. You know, where did you qualify? Yeah, last and second. I mean, for the whole team, all those Haas guys that have felt embarrassed for so many years. It was just the best story of the weekend, really.
It really was such a brilliant story. Good for them.
And Valtteri, good for Valtteri.
But poor old Mick Schumacher, where's he going to end up? What's going to happen? Surely he can't. There's no hiding now. There's absolutely no hiding.
No. There's a few drivers on my list that don't really want another year, I don't think. I also I think I mentioned that I thought Ocon might come out and get ahead of Alonso, which he did.
I only say these people. I say these people just to say the opposite of you. That's the only reason. I didn't think Sainz would really beat Charles, but there you go.
Yuki Tsunoda, who's perhaps on that list. Only one more year, Yuki, before you're going to have to go terrible qualifying again for Yuki. But he redeemed himself in the race to get back to 8th. So I thought that was a good race for Yuki. One person I wrote off slightly last weekend, I'd maybe back off a bit, Guan Yu Zhao. I mean, obviously the Alpha's good. He didn't stay with Valtteri, but I was impressed. A good solid race for 10th. Of course, it was Mick that missed out on points by being 11th. Then your Lance Stroll 12th, best Aston. Alex Albon, good feisty race for Williams 13th. And McLaren's 14th and 15th. They only beat Latifi. Oh, and Hulkenberg, of course, was at the back, having not raced much, but. Yeah, a really good weekend. I enjoyed the racing. I had to watch it last night. Couldn't watch it live, so I was at Southampton watching the football. So I know.
What happened there, Tiff?
No, sorry, no, we don't know about that. Yeah, we lost to Manchester City, but entertaining Formula 1. I'm not convinced that the overtaking is fixed, or even that the following closely is fixed. But I thought it was a very good debut and reliability. When you think these are all brand new cars that only had 6 days testing, or what was it, 3 days shakedown and 3 days testing because they didn't call it a test. Yeah, really interesting. And the Formula 2 and Formula 3 races were, fantastic as well. So much overtaking because they're back together at the same weekend, which is so much better than having those stupid 2 reverse grid races and one, which some idiot decided was a good idea for young drivers.
Don't you mix your words, okay?
Tell also, the Formula 2 and Formula 3, they had the sprint race first. Because, it's when you do your reverse. And they used to have the reverse after the feature race. So with the feature race, halfway through the field, towards the end of it, they're all battling who would be 10th, who was 9th, who was 11th. If you got 10th, you'd be on pole for the next day's sprint race. At least this time, the sprint race grid came from reversing the qualifying, which that should be, and top 10. So that was good. And Dutchman Richard Verschoor, who was 9th fastest, came from second on the grid to win the sprint race. Sensation the F2 was this Aussie, Jack Doohan, the son of Mick Doohan, of course, the Aussie superbike, not superbike, Moto GP, as you'd call it now, champion. He was on pole for the main race and battled for the lead. And sadly came out the pits and banged his wing on the back of the eventual winner, Théo Pourchaire, and had to go to the pits for wing damage. So Pourchaire won, really the pre-season favourite, against Liam Lawson, the Kiwi, who's another pre-season favourite. So really good for F2 racing from start to finish. Jake Hughes got 9th, best Brit, Ollie Cool 17th. So F2 was good. F3, where we do have British talent, where we hope will be winning. But they qualified 11th, 12th and 15th, which wasn't so good. Ollie Behrman, Zach O'Sullivan and Johnny Edgar. But it gave Zach O'Sullivan pole for the sprint race. We had the sprint race, we had Brits first and second, which was really good, except it was a reverse grid race. But in fact, Ollie Behrman came through to win on the road, and then he was the first track limit culprit. And had a 5-second penalty at the end of the race, which put him into second place behind the French kid Isaac Hapjar. So that was good for the Brits. Zach O'Sullivan dropped back to 6th, Edgar to 13th. But the main race, which is always the more important to look at for who's best, was an Argentinian I've never heard of. Franco Colapinto was on pole. They dropped to 6th before the end. That was won by Frenchmen. French doing well. Victor Martin won it ahead of the recovering Arthur Leclerc was probably the star of F3 because he qualified 14th and came up to 2nd. So Arthur had probably the best race. The main race, Ollie Behrman, who'd looking the best so far, came 6th, Edgar 11th, and O'Sullivan 19th. But great entertaining race. F2 and F3 around that track, always entertain.
It's in
fact, the whole weekend was great.
Wheel to wheel, nose to nose stuff. You can get away with it when you're in the little caterhams. They look quite flimsy, but they're so strong. But you can get away with nudging. Of course, you can't with those cars because you ruin your aero. So you can't do that at all. But I enjoyed it. I thought Bahrain was quite good. I know it's not a lot of people don't like it. It looks spectacular under the lights. Yeah, lots going on. And
it's that silly corner. I've raced around it in a Holden celebrity race at one of the Grand Prix. Someone with Rick Parfitt from Status Quo was my co-driver. One of the celebrity co-drivers. And, I had a really good time. But that silly left-hand, the corner that annoys you most. They're all locking up the inside wheels. It's sort of half around the track, and there's a kink. So you're braking, turning through a flat-out left, and then it tightens, and everyone locks up front. In a Holden touring car, that was so tight. I mean, in a road car, you would be like the tightest Mallory Park hairpin. It's stupid tight. If you look at the lap of the track, if they just made that come out for the previous turn, we're often at the bottom of the hill, they'll come out almost side by side. If you made that a proper Druid's corner hairpin, you could exit the previous corner and maybe do an overtake, but instead it goes into that ridiculously tight corner.
I've driven around there as well, and one thing that you don't see on the TV is there's quite a lot of undulation on the track. Drop down. You don't see that on the TV, and that's quite scary. You sort of go down and right-hander, left-hander, but
nice bit over the hill before the penultimate corner. It's like a big hill when you come up and over the top and then down into the penultimate corner.
Very good, and it's on to Saudi Arabia, I think.
Back to that track. With its
your favourite
dangerous, but that stupid first corner. Oh,
what is going to happen there? Can't wait for that.
Someone will hit someone. Someone will hit someone.
But I'll tell you what was quite good, and crikey, talking of someone hitting someone, it didn't hit anyone, but let's go to Moto GP for Indonesia, the first time ever there in Indonesia. Of course, we had Susie Perry on the show last week, was it? Crikey.
Yes, Susie was there. I told her to take her brolly and her bikini because it was hot and rainy, and I was about right with the weather. And of course, Susie did look hot as always, but she looks hot whatever she's wearing. But
are you allowed to say that these days? Is that?
I don't know. I thought about that.
She's a friend, so you are. No, she's a friend, so you're allowed to say that, and you should be allowed to say that.
She's a lovely
You
lady.
should be able to say somebody looks hot. If I would say you look hot, which I don't, obviously, but because you don't look hot. But if you look hot, I would say you look hot. So what does it matter whether you're male, female, whatever you identify as?
You're about to say before the racing.
God, blimey. Well, I was just
flying Spaniard.
Yeah. Anyway, who didn't see it or who hasn't seen it? But what do they call it when you just a high sider?
Well, it's a weird thing with bikers because it happens when the back goes. You spun it up too much throttle, so you're in oversteer mode. The trouble is, you then shut the throttle to stop the slide, and then of course the rear bites, and it flicks you up in the air. And I often wonder why bikers that know that's going to happen, you should almost sort of stay on, almost wind up more throttle to make sure you go down in the low sider. But it's probably such a natural thing to shut the throttle. But Mark went so high in the air, and we saw when he came down. He landed.
Sorry, your stunt double's walking in. If you wonder who that is in the mirror, that's Tiff's stunt double. When we do filming, we can't afford him every day, so we get Andrew to come.
Where is it? Is he coming around the corner?
He's just gone off to get something. No, I'm so sorry.
Because Mark's just coming back from this huge injury. He had an arm problem, and then he's had a couple of concussions. And the way his helmet hit the road, this was another massive concussion, and they wouldn't let him race.
He obviously was very dazed. Got up and started walking. He just thought, "Wow, sit down and relax." But incredible, really. But it was exciting. I thought it was very exciting. There's always so much overtaking and so much going on.
It was wet as well, so we had a really great wet race. And funny enough, the wet race solved a huge problem that was growing, because they'd only resurfaced the track 4 weeks ago, madly, and in 40-degree heat, so it probably never got hard. It was actually breaking up. We'd had the Moto3, Moto2 races, and they were worried that the track would break up in the middle of the race and there'd just be gravel on the track. It'd be impossible. So luckily, the rain clouds came and they had this fantastic wet weather race. Fabio Quartararo, the champion, the French champion, on his Yamaha, isn't he? Had a terrible first round, but he was on pole. He was back, had a wonderful run to second. Lots of battling. Miguel Oliveira with KTM was really the star out front, leading all the way. But it was this battle I loved. The best battle really was this battle for 8th place, which was featured on the television, because it was Darren Binder, the brother of Brad Binder, who's already won a Grand Prix on KTMs. Darren's come up from Moto 2 last year, and he came from 22nd on the grid to get to 8th. And there was involved in this 6-bike battle to the finish, to who would finish 8th. In fact, it was his brother, Brad Binder, that got the 8th. So the Binder battle was hugely entertaining. But to see those boys out when it's wet and, the rain and the storms, the clouds, they are amazing. Sadly, the rain, well, maybe spots of rain. Jake Dixon could explain for him dropping it. Jake, who's had a terrible season in Moto2 last year, he's suddenly got a new team and he's really up the front. He's got pole position. Sam Lowes, the other Brit, was 3rd on the grid. But Jake didn't make the best of starts, dropped back to 3rd. Then he overtook Sam to go to 2nd. There were just spots of this rain, they thought. Anyway, the front folded under him and he was inconsolable after the race. But fantastic to see Jake Dixon on the pace with Sam. Sam dropping back to finish 4th in the end. But the race was won by, my pronunciation now, from Thailand, Somkiat Chantra, and there's this grin. Again, we always talk about Moto GP, don't we? There's interview box afterwards. Everyone seems to be smiling when he finished 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. Somkiat smile. He'd done some blonde highlights on top of his black hair, and he just looked so with bright teeth and a huge grin. I mean, he's been in Moto2, I think, for a few years now. And he's 3 years. His best result was 5th. He was 18th in the championship last year. But he was on the front of the grid. But of course, again, it goes with the temperature, the heat. He comes from Thailand, Indonesia. They're used to running in real humidity, very hot tracks. So yeah, it was the most wonderful win I've seen. Pedro Costa, our gleaming Motos, he still hasn't had a good weekend in Moto2 yet. He fell off under a yellow flag and got a long lap penalty. So he only qualified 10th and ended up 9th. So again, great racing.
Yeah, just going back to seeing the winner, and you just the emotion and the jubilation.
Yeah,
imagine 3 years and not getting any result, not even been on the podium. And
I know, first podium, you're on the pole.
It's just amazing.
Moto3, where we do have some riders, like sadly not John McPhee, who's been our only Moto3 rider for a couple or 3 years. The Scots, he had a shunt in doing his they go training on these dirt bikes, don't they? And he's broken a couple of vertebrae or cracked them, and he's going to be out for a while. So really shame John McPhee not out in Indonesia. But our 2 young Brits, this wonderful Vision track racing team that's the last putting some British riders into the lower echelons of Moto GP. Scott Ogden was quite a star. He had been further up in testing. He only qualified 18th, but he battled through to finish 13th. And he was on the pace of the leaders once they got into the second half of the race. Fantastic ride from Scott Ogden. His teammate Josh Watley not doing so well, back down in 27th and finished 20th. So some possible riders, the British riders of the future, beginning to climb that ladder. And Jake Dixon really looking good in Moto2. So. But it rained and it was hot.
Still time, just a transition period, hopefully, just a short transition period. But still time. So USA, Tiff, there's quite a lot going on.
Four major races. 2 of the major races at the same track. Because Sebring's had this famous 12-hour race. It's almost 3rd in line from the Le Mans 24-hour race, the Daytona 24-hour race, the Sebring 12-hour race. But it lost its world championship status when the Americans went their own way with regulations. And the World Championship's only come back for the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, I think. And they have this 1,000-mile race on the Friday now for the World Endurance Championship. And the traditional Sebring 12-hour race still happens over the weekend or the Saturday for the IMSA races. And of course, this is the last year. Next year, they're going to finally be combining the World Championship rules with the IMSA rules, and we should have the most wonderful field of sports cars. As it is at the moment, there's only 4 cars in the top class of the World Endurance, 2 Toyotas again, 1 Alpine and 1 Glickenhaus. And this balance of power that's going to be a huge controversy when sports cars do join together next year. The Toyota, they've taken away, because they have hypercar, they've got 4-wheel drive. They can choose 4-wheel or rear wheel. You have different weights and it's a minefield. But they've taken away the speed they can use the front wheel drive of the 4 has gone up. And that's the way they're regulating the Toyotas to hold the advantage. And then it was sort of 50 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour before you could use your front wheel drive. Now it's like 80 or 90 miles. I don't know the right numbers. So they were really hobbled, the poor old Toyotas. And the Alpine was quicker all weekend. Then in the race, we had this weird crash. Jose Maria Lopez in one of the Toyotas, while lapping a back marker, pinched him a bit. He was going around the outside of a corner, went sideways, just dented into the wall. I thought he probably got away with it. Came back on track and said, "Oh no, I haven't got a problem. I haven't got a problem." Next shot we have, he's steaming at full speed with tyre smoke pouring off his front bodywork, coming up to this very fast left-hand corner. He just went straight on. He had no steering. A huge shunt, hit the tyre walls up in the air, rolled over, ended up on his roof. And everybody's saying, why wasn't he limping back to the pits to check? He knew he'd hit the wall with the nose, sort of brain, I don't know, red mist. He is a bit of a red mist driver, apparently. I didn't say that. Anyway, that put one Toyota out, including Mike Conway, the only Brit in there. So the Alpine cruised to win over the Toyota second, the surviving Toyota, the Glickenhaus third. A quick shout out for Brits that did well. 4th overall MMP2 winners, Paul di Resta and Ollie Jarvis. Paul, of course, we see on the telly a lot with the Formula One, who are partnered by a 16-year-old American kid, Josh Pearson, become the youngest ever podium race winner in world sports cars. Wow. He's doing Le Mans this year. He's going to be the youngest ever Le Mans rider. I mean, he was 16 on Valentine's Day this year. Wow. So he was 15. I know, I don't know. The point is, he's done quite a few years in karting. He's done Formula F2000, the sort of beginning level of single season American. He hasn't got any podiums. I mean, he's not really done much.
How has he done that? Yeah. I mean, that's what a prodigy that is. Yeah, I know money, but still to get on the podium. That's.
I know. I mean, to be fair, Paul or Ollie, one of them said, he did a triple opening stint, and didn't make any mistakes. And
I shouldn't put you on the spot, but do you know the times? I mean, how far off?
No, I never looked. I'd always love to look. It's quite time consuming to go into live timing, work out who's driving, and then you've got to look for about 5 or 6 laps because you get caught in traffic. So it's not a regular. So no, very hard. But yeah, the boys, just still amazing that he could do the stints.
Wow.
Elsewhere, other Brits, quick shout, GTO Pro Nick Tandy came second. He's now driving for Corvette. Used to be a Porsche driver for so many years. He was beaten by Porsche, so Tandy will pretty much now be. We had a winner of the GTM, so shout out for David Pittard, who came first in GTM in Aston Martin. Sebring 12 hours, as I said. Alex Lynn was part of the winning team. We had a lot of British stars doing IMSA over in America, where they go over and earn good money. In fact, 6 of the 15 drivers in the top 5 cars are British drivers. So a lot of British drivers over there. And the top 5 are all the lead lap at the end of the 12-hour race. Elsewhere, LMP2 podium, 3rd for Ryan Dial and Kyle Tilley, and GT2 2nd for Steve McLaren. So lots of Brits having fun doing sports cars in America.
Good stuff. It wasn't the only thing in America. There was also your...
Quickly, I know. So
well, IndyCar was quite good, but it's
that Texas. I'm not a big fan of those.
Same as me.
Really flat out. There's no real. I mean, it's terrifying speeds. Like 221 miles an hour on this Texas oval.
Every single bang, bang, bang.
And they couldn't get out. They couldn't make a second lane work. I think it was a NASCAR race. NASCAR, they put this black extra grippy stuff, which I don't know whether it works half the time, and half the time it doesn't. But if the IndyCars got up into that, there was some big shunts, going off at 200 miles an hour, took out about 5 cars. But on the last lap, Joseph Newgarden had been tracking down Scott McLaughlin, who won the first race down where were we in the street, St. Pete. And he was gaining. Scott caught these back markers last lap. Anyway, Newgarden went around the outside of him at 220 miles an hour, won by 0.066 seconds. So a spectacular finish. But we have to mention, sadly, poor old Jack Harvey, our only Brit out. No, of course, not only Brit. We've got Callum Miller to his 16th in the end, ILOT. But Jack, really our front-running British driver, had a huge shunt in qualifying. Absolutely mangled the car. And, again, he got a bit of a bash on the head. So they wouldn't let him race, but I think it'd be fine for the next round. Santino Ferrucci, the controversial young American, came in to take that car and finish 9th. Last story for that. Jimmy Johnson, the NASCAR veteran.
Jimmy Johnson.
He's made a bit of a fool of it. He just wanted to do single-seaters, you know. And it's a bit like, you know, I don't know, someone at the back, Lance Stroll or something, you know, buying in his way. He wanted to do single-seaters, and he kept on spinning off on the road course. He eventually got sort of into the top 15 in road courses, but he's now decided to go ovals. He didn't fancy the ovals at first. But he finished 6th. He qualified out 15th or somewhere. So Jimmy Johnson, he's now going to his first Indianapolis Speedway. So a good story there for NASCAR fans, which leads us straight into NASCAR, just quickly. There's always a NASCAR story every week. And Atlanta, 1.5 mile, they've steepened up the banking. And they've created a Daytona flat-out oval. So they just stayed too wide, all around 1.5 miles instead of the super speedway size. And it was tremendous to watch, because the only way to overtake is to do this bumping, you know, bump, bump, bump. And of course, on several occasions, if you bump the wrong place, the poor bloke in the front is trying to keep it in control, they'd spin off and hit the wall and take out 3 more cars. Sadly, Kyle Larson got taken out in one of these bump, bump, bump crashes. But his teammates at Hendrick Chevy, William Byron, came through to win. So spectacular NASCAR. I mean, it's full throttle all the way around.
Spectacular NASCAR, wow.
It is. It was very entertaining around a very tight track with constant too wide, pushing, shoving, battling.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell people what's coming up next week. And whilst I'm doing that, I need your predictions for the Formula One, because the Formula One is at Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. It's only got Formula 2 in support. There's no Formula 3 next week. And NASCAR goes to the Circuit of the Americas. And I'm going to predict, for the first time this season, you're going to see a new rivalry. You're going to see the Max versus Charles rivalry. And I don't think they're going to finish. I think there's going to be some argy-bargy. I just got this sneaky suspicion you're going to see Carlos winning, Sergio second, Lewis third. You heard it here first.
Carlos winning, Sergio second, and Lewis third, because the other two are going to take each other out. That's silly chicane, probably turn one.
That's exactly my prediction. What's your prediction?
I'm going to have a week off, I think. I'm going to rest on my laurels. no chance of getting 2 in a row, is it? Let's be honest.
Definitely
not. I don't know. Because it was a bit of a power circuit down the back, wasn't it? It's a bit of a, you know, engine circuit, Saudi, and that silly first circuit.
They got the fast car. Red Bull got the fast car. Mercedes definitely have to do something about that.
They can't change much, can they, in a week? I can't see many spare parts being flown in, you know, that's going to transform the Mercedes. So I think
there's a new rivalry in town. New rivalry, and it goes from their karting days. Charles and Max, they're great mates, but it's different on track.
Those 2 laps they had in together, they both behaved quite well, and Charles used his head and got back after each the end of the first lap. But yeah, okay, they're going to take each other out.
So you're going to give us a prediction, or are you just going to leave?
No, Leclerc's going to win again. Leclerc's going to win again. That's good. It. Final.
On that note, we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for joining us as always. Cheers. Bye.